The anime begins with our main protagonist, Kaido, creeping towards a slime in a cave. But instead of using a sword or knife, he sprays 2 bottles of insecticide on the slime until it withers away and dies. Kaido feels a surge of happiness at how skilled he has become at killing slimes. This isn't surprising, as this is his 999th slime kill since he started working in these dungeons, determined to reach the 1000 mark. Venturing deeper into the dungeon, Kaido spots a golden slime sitting on a pillar. Excited by his luck at finding such a rare spawn for his 1000th kill, he quickly realizes this one isn't going to be easy. Undeterred, Kaido grabs a more powerful spray gun filled with pesticide and successfully kills the slime. He celebrates his 1000th kill and eagerly checks his stats, only to realize his level remains the same despite killing a golden slime. Hoping for good loot, he finds a small golden card with a girl drawn on it instead of a normal mana core. Initially confused, he soon realizes it's a servant card, a very rare item, and checks the stats, discovering the servant is a Valkyrie named Sylphie. Deciding to leave the dungeon before researching further, Kaido heads back, passing a group of adventurers with impressive armor, which he envies. At the reception, he exchanges slime cores for money. The receptionist then Hitsu gives him 100 yen per core, totaling 500 yen, which disappoints Kaido, but he takes it and moves on. He then asks Hitsu about the value of a rare servant card, especially a divine class one. But Hitsu thinks for a moment and tells him such a card could be worth over 1 billion yen. Shocked, Kaido keeps this information to himself, heads to his locker, changes into everyday clothing, and exits the area. It turns out the dungeon is part of an amusement park where people can get memberships to explore and find valuable items. Children in costumes talk about wanting to be explorers when they grow up, but Kaido is lost in thought about the card. While waiting for the train, he meets his friends Shinji and Hayato. On the train, Kaido tells them he's still stuck at level 3 and asks why they don't explore dungeons. Hayato then explains that 2 years ago, they encountered a goblin on the 2nd floor of a dungeon. Thinking it would be easy prey, the goblin ended up beating them all badly. Since then, Shinji and Hayato decided dungeons weren't for them and preferred exploring other attractions with their passes. Later that night, Kaido gets off the train, goes home, has dinner with his family, takes a bath, and goes to sleep. The next morning, he wonders whether to sell the card for 1 billion yen, which would buy him all the armor and video games he wants. However, his thoughts are interrupted by his friend Katsuragi, who asks where he was last night. Initially, Kaido lies, saying he was at a party with Shinji and Hayato. However, when Katsuragi asks them about the party, they end up giving different answers, like hooking up with your mother and bowling. However, Katsuragi realizes they are lying and asks if Kaido went to the dungeons again, but Kaido manages to lie convincingly and barely escapes. Later that day at school, he asks his friends what they would do with the servant card. They immediately reply that they would sell it, as it's worth a lot and you can't summon a servant outside of the dungeons anyway. Kaido then ponders whether to sell the card, but when he goes to the dungeons that day, he decides to keep it, wanting to become one of the strongest adventurers ever. Hiding from the camera, he takes out the card and calls forth Sylphie, the Valkyrie, to be his servant and follow his command. Suddenly, the card starts glowing, emitting a bright light that transforms into a huge woman with feathery wings and an ethereal form. She grabs Kaido and disappears. Confused, Kaido turns around to see a small Valkyrie in armor standing beside him. He asks who she is, wondering if a child got lost, but the Valkyrie replies that she is Sylphie, his servant from now on. Kaido's dreams of becoming a powerful adventurer shatter as he drops to the floor, regretting not selling the card. He pulls himself together and tells her they need to hunt some slimes. Sylphie senses something nearby, and Kaido decides to test her intuition, asking her to lead him to the creatures. She then easily locates the slime, and when Kaido asks if she can kill it, she immediately goes into action. Initially, Kaido wasn't expecting much from such a small girl, but to his surprise, Sylphie conjures a lightning attack so devastating that he fears the whole cave might collapse. Kaido then walks towards her, asking if she's alright, but she blushes and claims she's hungry. Remembering that servants eat mana cores, Kaido feeds her the core from the slime. She then thanks him and claims there are more slimes nearby. Kaido then asks if she can only detect slimes, and Sylphie replies that she can detect all monsters but feels hungry after each battle, needing to eat a mana core. Realizing this method is impractical for making money, Kaido devises a plan. He tells Sylphie to track down the slimes, which she happily does. Kaido then uses his spray bottles to kill them one by one. This efficient method allows him to save time by heading directly to the targets and neutralizing them with his insecticide sprays. After killing a bunch, he levels up to level 4 and gains a new passive skill called Slime Slayer, which boosts his stats by 50% when fighting slimes. Though initially disappointed with his new skill, Sylphie raises his spirits by saying that gaining a skill is an achievement in itself. Kaido smiles, thanks her for the help, and says he will return home as it's getting late. But Sylphie asks if he will summon her again soon, and he promises to do so as soon as possible. He then recalls Sylphie back to her servant card and heads to the reception to sell the manacores. However, Hitsu is shocked, exclaiming that he broke the daily slime extermination record by a large margin. She asks how he did it, and Kaido lies, saying he just got lucky. He then takes his 15,000 yen reward and heads home. Later that night, he contemplates venturing to the second level of the dungeon. Despite his fear of goblins, he believes Sylphie's strength will help him defeat them. That night, he dreams of a childhood memory, sitting in front of the TV with Katsuragi, watching an interview with Katsuragi's dad, a famous adventurer. The interview fills Kaido with amazement and solidifies his desire to follow in the same footsteps. The next morning, he wakes up with newfound conviction and confidence. Equipped with a new sword and shield bought with his reward money, he heads to the second floor of the dungeon alongside Sylphie, determined to clear all the dungeons and become the most famous adventurer in the world. As they enter the cave and walk for a while, Sylphie notices something is wrong. She then asks Kaido if he's okay, seeing that he looks pale and is shaking. Terrified of the cave, Kaido lies, saying he's just excited. But when Sylphie senses a goblin nearby, Kaido immediately turns and starts running. Sylphie, confused, asks what he's doing, but Kaido lies again, claiming he has urgent work at home. However, he suddenly remembers Katsuragi's dad from the TV interview and stops, deciding not to give up on his dreams, and grabs his wooden sword. They soon find a goblin sleeping behind a giant rock, but Kaido is too scared to act and asks Sylphie to kill it. She quickly agrees and begins chanting her spell. Suddenly, the goblin wakes up ready to fight, but Kaido jumps in between with his sword and tells Sylphie he's changed his mind. He rushes towards the goblin but misses his strike as the goblin backs off. The goblin then attacks, trying to ram Kaido to the ground, but he blocks the hit with his shield at the last moment. Seizing the opportunity, Kaido rushes in with his sword, but the goblin blocks the strike, disarming him and jumping to give him back shots. However, Kaido falls backward, defenseless, but remembers his sprays. Quickly, he sprays the goblin's eyes, blinding it and giving him a chance to land the final blow. But as he retrieves his sword and rushes towards the goblin, he trips over a rock and accidentally stabs the goblin in the chest, killing it instantly. Sylphie congratulates Kaido, who is still terrified but relieved to be alive. He then grabs the mana core and a golden glow emits from him, telling that he's leveled up again. Checking his stats, he discovers a new skill called Goblin Slayer. Although he has mixed feelings about this seemingly useless skill, he decides to accept it and move on. They soon venture deeper into the cave, where another goblin attacks, but Sylphie uses a defensive barrier to block the attacks, while Kaido times his sword slash perfectly, killing the monster. Kaido then kills his third goblin using the spray bottle to blind it before delivering the final blow. However, Sylphie drags him to yet another foe, and Kaido kills this goblin with a sword strike to the head, ranking up to level 6. As they continue walking, Kaido asks if Sylphie knows anything about the dungeons, but she replies that she has no idea and that her sole purpose is to help her master. Deeper inside, they find their final goblin of the day. It attacks Kaido while Sylphie uses her lightning magic to destroy the beast. Kaido then feeds her the mana core before heading outside. He hands over the mana crystals to Hitsu, lying again that it was just a fluke, and then heads home. That night, his body was so sore that he's unable to move from his bed. The next morning, he drags himself to school, walking alongside Katsuragi, who immediately suspects he went to the dungeons. Kaido denies it, claiming he was just bodybuilding at the gym, which is why he's sore. In the classroom, Kaido tells Shinji and Hayato about his new adventures in the level 2 dungeons, including killing 4 goblins. They are surprised and skeptical, but Kaido insists he's telling the truth and says he's going deeper today. After school, he returns to the dungeons with Sylphie and explores the distant parts of the cave. They kill goblins again, and with great teamwork, Sylphie blocks attacks while Kaido lands the killing blows. When Kaido gets too tired, Sylphie finishes the monsters with her lightning magic. After another exhausting expedition, Kaido sleeps like a log. The next day, he upgrades to a Drake, which does much more damage to the goblins, but he's so exhausted, he ends up sleeping in class. Despite this, he continues his adventures, going to the dungeons day after day and killing goblins by any means necessary until he reaches level 10, a big milestone for him. This time, he gets a special skill called Divine Love, which boosts his stat growth at every level, depending on the amount of love and care a divine goddess shows him. He immediately decides to confess how happy he is to go on adventures with someone as cool as Sylphie. The next monster they encounter is a glowing skeleton, a creature they've never faced before. Kaido tells Sylphie to stay alert, and she deploys her magic barrier. The skeleton then rushes at them, crashing against the barrier and trying to break through. Kaido tries to attack but finds his weapons too weak for this rare spawn. He then asks Sylphie to deal with it, and she chants her spell, shooting a lightning bolt that kills it instantly. However, the mana core dropped by the skeleton is bright red. This made him wonder if it could be rare, but decides to feed it to Sylphie anyway. Later that day, Kaido goes to Hitsu with his loot and asks about the mana core dropped by the glowing skeleton. Hitsu then explains that it's a rare drop and can easily fetch upwards of 2 million yen. Learning that he could have been a millionaire, Kaido was devastated. Hitsu then tells him not to worry, as encountering it once means he might meet it again. That night, Kaido wonders about the lost money but decides it doesn't matter since he leveled up significantly. He contemplates moving on to the 3rd floor but knows the enemies there appear in groups and are much more dangerous. The next day, he tells Sylphie that he wants her to simply watch for a while and not intervene. However, Sylphie, thinking that she did something wrong, apologizes, but Kaido explains that he wants to go up to the 3rd floor. He's afraid of becoming too dependent on her to save him, so he wants to get stronger first. Hearing this, Sylphie is relieved and wishes him good luck. Suddenly, a goblin appears from behind a rock and Kaido confidently tells Sylphie to watch as he deals with it. However, his plan backfires and he ends up getting injured badly. This led to him buying potions from Hitsu, which drains all of his savings. That night, he realizes he needs a lot of mana cores to feed Sylphie and better equipment. He decides to go back to square one and enters the 1st floor again to kill as many slimes as possible, gaining skills, levels, and mana cores. After several days of hard work in the dungeons alone, he finally collects enough mana cores to feel comfortable moving on to the 3rd floor. Before leaving the cave, Sylphie claims she senses a different kind of slime. Her intuition proves correct when Kaido spots a silver slime nearby. He immediately jumps into action and rushes the slime with his spray gun, but the slime is faster and dodges away. Thankfully, Sylphie is raiding nearby and uses her lightning magic to kill the slime instantly. To their surprise, the slime drops another servant card, an incredibly lucky find. Kaido then picks up the card and sees it's a demon rank card for a servant named Luce. He looks at Sylphie, who seems visibly upset by the card and soon realizes that demons and goddesses must not get along well. Despite this, he decides to follow his own wishes without consulting Sylphie and summons the demon servant right there. A huge red flame envelops them, and a large demon mommy emerges, flying straight through Kaido in her ethereal form, just like what happened with Sylphie. Soon he looks down and spots another summon, this time a demon with bat wings and horns. Kaido is devastated to see that Lucilia looks nothing like the beautiful mommy shown on the card. They soon introduce themselves, but Lucilia quickly thinks Kaido seems neither reliable nor smart. However, Sylphie isn't fond of her belittling their master, but Lucilia tells her not to worry as every demon is like this, and Sylphie reluctantly accepts this. Lucilia then asks about Sylphie, noticing she looks like a Valkyrie, but Sylphie confirms that she is Kaido's servant just like Lucilia, and looks forward to working together. Suddenly, Lucilia demands food, but Kaido refuses, saying she hasn't done anything yet. Sylphie then notices a slime nearby, and Lucilia smugly steps in to do her job. She uses an overpowered attack called Hellfire of Destruction to obliterate the slime, and Kaido feeds her the core. However, Lucilia demands more as she is not satisfied, but Kaido tells her he has no more cores. She calls him a cheapskate and begrudgingly uses her other attack, Breath of Erosion, on a goblin, practically melting it. But Sylphie and Kaido find it too gross to watch. Kaido then gives Lucilia the core, which she likes better than the slime core, and suggests exploring lower floors for tastier cores from stronger monsters. However, Kaido stops her, saying there are more monsters on the 3rd floor. Lucilia doesn't see any problem with this, but Kaido insists they need new weapons and supplies first. So Lucilia agrees to listen to him, especially after Sylphie tells her to obey their master. The next day, the three head to the 3rd floor. This time, Kaido has bought a crossbow as his new weapon. Sylphie thinks it suits him well, and Kaido mentions it was quite expensive, but Lucilia states that price doesn't matter. They then encounter two hellhounds and Kaido shoots at them but misses, causing the hounds to attack him. Sylphie quickly protects him with a barrier, and Lucilia takes out the hounds with Hellfire of Destruction. Kaido then feeds her a core, but she demands the other one as well. Kaido refuses again, saying he won't have any left if she eats them all. She isn't thrilled, but Kaido promises her an extra core if she kills more monsters. But she threatens to send him to hell if he breaks his promise, which scares him a bit. They then soon encounter two wild boars, so Lucilia uses Hellfire of Destruction again but only kills one of the monsters, causing the other to charge at them. She tries to use another attack, but Kaido stops her and shoots the boar. However, one shot isn't enough, startling Kaido and causing him to fall. Sylphie then tries to help with her Divine Lightning, but before she can, Kaido kills the boar with another shot. She then praises Kaido, but Lucilia finds it lame that he was scared. Suddenly, Kaido notices he has leveled up to level 11 and Lucilia asks for magic cores again. Afterwards, Kaido exits the facility thinking he won't make any profit if he keeps feeding all the cores to his servants. On the way, he overhears a party of adventurers talking and learns that 3 girls in the party can make it to the 6th floor without any problems. The scene then cuts to Kaido thinking about this in class. He is sure their party can make it to the 6th floor as well if they work hard. He daydreams about advancing further into the dungeon and his classmates wake him up from his delusion. Kaido's classmates wonder how he can be so carefree given that even they don't have enough points to get into their school of choice. They soon find out that he is carefree because he hasn't decided on a school yet. However, Katsuragi overhears this and asks Kaido which school he will choose. Unsure what to say, he asks her school of choice first and she tells him she's going to Oka Academy, wondering if he will enroll there as well. Not having made a choice, he tells her that he will, making Katsuragi happy as they will go to school together again. Kaido wonders why she was so happy, and his friends decided not to tell him for his own good. The scene cuts to him in the labyrinth again, where the servants kill all the monsters they come across one by one. Unlike Sophie, Lucilia constantly asks Kaido for more cores, and he has no choice but to listen to her. Sophie isn't happy about this, but Kaido doesn't catch on. However, when Sophie looks at him, he asks if something is wrong, but she doesn't tell him anything. At home, Kaido notices his mother watching a drama on TV with a similar situation to his. Watching the drama, he figures out that Sophie is probably anxious because of the new servant Lucilia and fears this could lead to a duel between them just like in the drama. Thinking this would be devastating, Kaido wonders how to resolve it. The next morning, he meets Katsuragi on his way to school, and she notices that he looks tired. However, after talking to him, she finds out that he didn't sleep last night, so she asks if he has trouble and offers to help. He tries to tell her the truth but decides not to, instead informing her that his 2 friends have befriended 2 girls with different personalities and the quieter one doesn't like the one with the harsh personality. After hearing this, Katsuragi suggests talking to the quiet girl directly. Later in the dungeon, Kaido only summons Sylphie and tells her that he wants to talk to her alone. This causes Sylphie to blush but isn't thrilled to find out that he wants to talk about Lucilia. He then asks if she dislikes Lucilia, and Sylphie denies this, explaining that at first she found Lucilia scary, but now knows the demon didn't mean any harm and is actually a nice and kind girl. But Kaido insists on knowing if she has any problems, telling her she's important to him. Flustered, Sylphie admits she feels her master is too kind to Lucilia and wants him to be the same for her. This confuses Kaido as he thinks that he treats them equally, but Sylphie explains that Lucilia has been getting more cores and more of his attention. Kaido soon realizes Sylphie is jealous and agrees to give her as many cores as Lucilia, and to talk to her more from now on. Sylphie is glad to hear Kaido's reassurances, and later Kaido starts feeding both Sylphie and Lucilia the same number of cores. He compliments Sylphie for her well-timed attack on a monster, which prompts Lucilia to demand praise as well. Kaido also praises her, making Lucilia act smug. They then encounter a wild boar, which Sylphie takes out, causing her to level up in the process. Kaido soon notices her stats have increased significantly, and Sylphie is pleased. Lucilia then congratulates her, and not long after they encounter 3 hellhounds, which Sylphie defeats with a single attack. They soon fight another wild boar, with Sylphie defending everyone with a barrier. There, Kaido observes that her barriers are more durable now. Lucilia tries to attack the boar, but Kaido stops her, wanting to handle it himself. He then feeds Sylphie some cores, which annoys Lucilia as she didn't get to fight. But Sylphie softly asks Kaido for more cores, making him realize that leveling up has increased her appetite as well. That afternoon, he exchanges the cores for money, and the appraiser notes that Kaido has been bringing fewer cores lately, expressing dissatisfaction. The next day, Kaido kills 25 slimes on the first dungeon level, and Sylphie praises him, but Lucilia is unhappy about not getting to fight. Kaido explains that he can't save up magic cores if she fights too, so Lucilia questions why he summoned her, but Sylphie expresses her happiness to support Kaido. Kaido appreciates her support, making Lucilia happy, though she doesn't admit it openly. She then quietly agrees to continue supporting him. The scene then shifts to Kaido searching online for better gear, where he finds a carbon nanotube suit that is too expensive for his budget. In the dungeon, he finds a blue metallic slime, attributing it to his god's blessing. Expecting a servant card, he is surprised when it drops a magic orb instead. He soon explains that this orb can make him a mage and uses it, gaining the water ball skill. Excited, he finds a hellhound and asks Sylphie to cast a barrier, while also ordering Lucilia to attack if he misses. Sylphie quickly casts the barrier, but the water ball fails to harm the hellhound, so Lucilia defeats it. Upon seeing its performance, Kaido is disappointed by his magic's ineffectiveness. Sylphie tries to cheer him up, admiring his ability to use magic at all, and Lucilia jokes that at least he won't have to worry about drinking water. Regretting not selling the magic orb that night, Kaido sits in a park feeling down. Suddenly, Katsuragi finds him and asks why he's out so late. He almost reveals his magic skill, but changes the subject to a disappointing movie. They then walk home together, and Kaido learns Katsuragi was returning from cram school. He also thanks her for her advice, which helps solve his problem. But when Katsuragi wonders if the situation was about him, he denies it. Upon hearing this, she leaves, and Kaido wonders if she was angry, thinking that she might be jealous like Sylphie. However, he soon dismisses the idea, thinking that it is unlikely. The next day, Kaido heads back to the dungeon to work on his water ball spell. He starts off slow, shooting a water ball at the wall, but it doesn't do much except getting your mom wet. However, Kaido is already exhausted from just one spell but keeps training. On his second try, he blasts the water ball as fast as he can, and both he and Sylphie are excited about it. Lucilia, however, is unimpressed because after just 2 water balls, Kaido is completely drained and collapses on the ground, so he heads home and falls asleep as soon as he hits the bed. In his dreams, Kaido remembers watching Katsuragi's dad on TV when he was a kid and how that made him dream of becoming an adventurer like him. Motivated by that dream, he returns to the dungeon the next day and starts practicing his water ball strikes again. This time he's gotten a lot faster and shoots multiple water balls at the dungeon walls, but eventually he runs out of mana. He takes a quick break to catch his breath, but as soon as he feels better, he jumps right back into training. This time, he experiments with the shape of the water ball, turning it into a cube. Thrilled with his success and keeps experimenting with different shapes, but soon he gets worn out and falls on his back. As he's walking out of the dungeon, he trips and falls into the arms of another adventurer. He quickly gets up and apologizes, but this amazing mommy asks if he's alright. Kaido then assures her he's fine and leaves, but she's concerned as he doesn't look well. Seeing him, her crew is impressed by his hustle and heads into the dungeon. The scene then shifts to Kaido dozing off in class, and when the teacher wakes him up, he loudly declares that he's going to give it his all in training today, making the whole class laugh. During the break, his friends ask what he meant by the training stuff, but Kaido explains that he's practicing a crucial skill for dungeon success. But then Katsuragi shows up asking if he's training for the dungeon, but Kaido quickly switches it up, saying he's talking about dance practice. Hearing this, she is relieved and tells him not to overdo it, saying she wants to see his dance performance someday, leaving Kaido and the boys alone. The next day, Kaido returns to the dungeon for some real combat action with his water ball. He shoots a goblin with it, but instead of popping like usual, the water ball stays solid and clogs up the goblin's airways, suffocating it. Sylphie and Lucilia praise him, but Kaido realizes he's not getting any more experience points from the monsters on the 3rd floor. This meant that it's time to level up and head down to the 4th floor. However, Kaido figures he needs better gear for this challenge, so he decides to buy something that's been on his wish list for a while. The next day, he arrives wearing a tight bodysuit, which Sylphie thinks looks great in, but Lucilia shatters his ego by calling him lame. Kaido then explains that the suit is high-end and pricey because it's made of carbon nanotubes that protect him from damage while being thin and light. He proceeds to detail how the suit has top defense against arrows and other piercing attacks, and he's also got a magic amplifying bracelet that'll make even his weak spells hit harder. However, he hasn't tested it out yet and shows off other stuff he bought, but Lucilia drags Sylphie away out of boredom. They eventually make their way to the 4th floor, where Sylphie senses a big creepy monster coming their way. Before Kaido can check the monster encyclopedia to see what they're up against, a giant big black cockroach appears and both girls freak out, clinging to each other. They then start blasting magic spells at the roach monster while running through the dungeon, with Kaido trying to keep up because he doesn't want to be left behind. After they exhaust themselves, Sylphie and Lucilia take a breather and almost attack Kaido when he comes running up to them. Realizing that it's him, she runs over and hugs Kaido, saying she was scared, while Lucilia maintains her tsundere act, claiming she's not scared of bugs. However, Sylphie apologizes to Kaido for leaving him behind and begs him to scold her. But he tells her he isn't mad because they cleared the 4th floor in record time with their wild rampage, explaining that he's collected a lot of mana cores from all the defeated monsters. Surprisingly, Lucilia refuses to eat the big black crystals, but she's too hungry to turn them down. Not long after, they went to scout the 5th floor, where Sylphie's sixth sense detects a sand monster and another monster nearby. Kaido takes aim with his crossbow, but his first arrow misses, and the second one goes right through the sand monster, which immediately retaliates and attacks him. After shouting out Sylphie's name, she quickly throws up a barrier to protect him. But Kaido soon realizes that these two monsters are immune to physical attacks, so he turns to Lucilia for backup. She straight up obliterates them with her fiery attack, and Kaido asks if she needs to recharge her mana with the nasty crystals, but is quickly rejected. They kept on exploring the 5th floor, but it seems like there aren't any more monsters nearby. Just then, Sylphie spots something weird on a wall, but Kaido doesn't see anything special about it. Sylphie then decides to go all out and blast a hole in the wall with her lightning attack, revealing a secret passageway. They soon head in, and Kaido warns the girls to watch out for any traps. Just as he says this, Lucilia tells him it's too late, and an arrow shoots out, sending Kaido to the ground in pain. His party is all worried, but thankfully his bodysuit protects him from any serious damage, so he bounces back in a few minutes. They keep moving forward, but then Lucilia steps on another trap tile. This time, Kaido steps back to avoid the arrow, but gets zapped by lightning instead. Surprisingly, he's totally fine and feels a bit energized by this. Shyly, Lucilia tells him to stop making her worry, but when he asks if she was actually worried about him, she goes full tsundere, denying it again. Eventually, they come across a massive gate with a badass painting on it, and Sylphie senses a crazy strong presence on the other side. But as Kaido's ready to call it a day and head home, the two girls didn't let him off the hook that easily. He then tries opening the gate, but it won't budge. So Sylphie just unleashes her lightning attack on it, breaking it open. They soon step inside and come face to face with two badass monsters. One's a red version of your father, and the other's a massive slime equivalent to the size of your mother. Now that they've come this far, Kaido tells his girls to focus on taking down the red ogre first. They then unleash their lightning and fire attacks, but the ogre barely even flinches because it's immune to magic damage. The ogre charges at them, but Sylphie's barrier skill blocks its attack. Kaido then tells Lucilia to handle the slime while he takes shots at the red ogre with his crossbow. Each arrow he fires chips away at the ogre's health, but then he runs out of arrows. The pissed off ogre starts pounding the barrier, while Lucilia is struggling to deal with the giant slime on her own. As a last resort, Kaido decides to rely on his water ball. He conjures up a water ball and it suddenly freezes because of the bracelet's effect. He then shoots the ice ball at the red ogre, slowly wearing down its health. But then he realizes his mana is running low, so Kaido gets crafty and shapes his ice balls into sharp icicles that pack a bigger punch against the red ogre. With the final 3 shots in his arsenal, Kaido brings down the red ogre, leaving the slime left. As Sylphie is about to smack the slime, Kaido jumps in and defends her with his shield. He then holds the slime back and tells Sylphie to get ready for her divine spear attack. However, his shield and gear start melting, but Sylphie charges at the slime with her divine spear and pierces right through it, barely doing damage to it. As Kaido is ready to throw in the towel, he soon remembers his hero and charges forward, dodging the slime's attacks. He pulls out his trusty bug spray because, giant or not, the monster is still a slime. He soon finishes his 2 bottles, so he digs into his bag and whips out 2 extra strong bug sprays. Kaido then unleashes them all on the slime, and finally, the slime's health hits 0 and it bites the dust. The girls all excitedly hug Kaido, but they end up hurting his injured shoulder. However, he quickly fixes it up by shoving a health potion right after that. But to their surprise, Lucilia levels up and Kaido checks out his stats to find that he's also leveled up a whole lot too. He wastes no time and starts gathering mana cores, but stumbles upon the red core of the ogre, which he knows will fetch a pretty penny. When he goes looking for the slime's core, he instead comes across a rare grade magic sword, which looked more like a steak knife than a magic sword. Later on, Kaido takes the red ogre mana core to Hitsugaya, who's all curious about where he found it. He then tells her about the hidden dungeon on the 5th floor and how he kicked the boss ass. But Hitsugaya says they've got to check that dungeon out fast and lets Kaido know that the red mana core is worth a whole lot of cash. Kaido is stoked to hear that news, and with another good news, Hitsugaya invites him to join an event next week where they'll be taking on the 7th floor as a group. The following week, Kaido heads to the event and bumps into the 3 girls from the other day. Their leader, Eri, introduces herself alongside with the pink cat girl who goes by Miku, with the last one being Hikari. Meanwhile, Katsuragi dreams of the past where she sees her dad heading off to buy milk in the dungeon. She asks him to come back soon and he promises to be home early for dinner. But as he leaves, Katsuragi wakes up. She then decides to go to her friend's house to study, but when she steps out, she wonders if Kaido is busy with dance practice or muscle training today. The scene soon shifts to the event participants lining up for teleportation. There, Kaido's crew is holding hands in the teleport circle, and suddenly, they find themselves on the 6th floor. Kaido is relieved they arrived safely, admitting it's only his 2nd time using the gate, the first being yesterday from the 6th floor to the ground. However, his teammates shared that it's the same for them, and they too were nervous. They soon meet a staff member who guides them to the stairs leading to the 7th floor, informing them that today's event will last 3 hours. Near the stairs, they spot a convenience store. Eri then asks Kaido if he needs anything, and Kaido, finding it convenient, decides to buy refills for his pesticide spray. His teammates, however, notice his heavy luggage, but he finds it odd they're traveling light. They explain it's because they have magic bags, shocking Kaido since those cost as much as a mansion. They then reveal their parents bought the bags for them, making Kaido realize they come from wealthy families. Eri then asks if Kaido has the proper equipment. However, embarrassed, he admits he's been gradually buying gear with money from selling magic cores. Meiko then points out he's only wearing a tight suit, and Hikari scolds her for being blunt. They soon gear up and head to the 7th floor, where they discuss the golem-type monsters that appear there. Suddenly, they spot shadows and quickly prepare for battle, but it turns out to be staff members cleaning the dungeon who encourage them before moving on. Not long after, Kaido shares that he's level 16 and learns that Eri is level 18 and Hikari and Miku are level 15. Meiko then also mentions Hikari's high MP, surprising Kaido since he has half that, finding her impressive. Soon, they encounter a stone golem and Eri instructs Hikari to use her magic while Miku protects Eri during the fight. Kaido is told to watch Eri's back, but she quickly defeats the golem on her own, impressing Kaido. Next, they face a bronze golem which Hikari traps with an earth wave spell. Miku's servant, Snatch, then dodges its attacks and uses a wind spell before Hikari finishes it with a fireball. Suddenly, an iron golem appears behind them. However, Kaido's crossbow is ineffective and Eri struggles to damage it. Hikari's fireball and Miku's snatch also fail, and the golem injures Snatch. Feeling cornered, Kaido thinks of summoning Sylphie or Lucilia, but drops a plate knife from his bag, remembering reading about a magic sword online. He learned that the magic sword can deal whatever damage the user imagines, so Kaido decides to visualize himself defeating the monster. He asks Hikari to use Earthwave to trap the monster, which she does, immobilizing it, and requests Eri to distract the monster, and she launches a barrage of attacks. Kaido then attacks the monster from behind with a magic sword, imagining it exploding, and the monster indeed blows up. Later, they sit in a cafe discussing their dungeon exploration. They talk about Kaido's tiny sword, and Kaido explains that he got it as a drop item recently and is relieved it works since it was his first time using it. However, he asks Miku how Snatch is doing and is relieved to hear that Snatch is fine. Kaido then mentions that it was his first time seeing a carbuncle, and that he's never even seen one in a video before. But Miku explains that servants can't be captured on camera. Following her, Eri asks Kaido if he has ever seen any of them on video, and Kaido realizes he hasn't, which explains why guild officials never asked about Sylphie and Lucilia. This causes him to wonder if they are the only ones who know about Snatch. But Miku clarifies that she picked Snatch from an auction and registered him with the guild, so everyone knows about him. After the conversation, Miku suggests they all put matching keychains on their magic pouches to commemorate participating in the event, and everyone agrees. Afterward, Eri asks Kaido to join their party as a permanent member, explaining that there are transfer gates every 5 floors and their current goal is to reach the gate on the 11th floor. Deep down, Kaido likes the idea but insists that he's just an ordinary explorer and not as special as they are. They then try to reassure him, saying they feel safer with him around. But he was soon reminded of his 2 servants. Kaido worries that if they find out he's bringing 2 little girls into the dungeon, he might get reported, so he asks for some time to consider it. This made Miku wonder if he disliked their party, but he assures her he needs time to think and will give them an answer later. The scene then shifts to him returning to the dungeon. Inside, he summons his servants, who are upset that he didn't summon them earlier. There he explains that he's considering forming a party with others, but his servants are unhappy and can't believe this is the first thing he mentions after seeing them. He then tells them he didn't abandon them, explaining he had business to handle and couldn't summon them in the morning. He tries to discuss the party again, but they insist that the 3 of them are fine as they are. Kaido persists, but Sylphie firmly tells him to end the conversation there. Lucilia also gets mad at him for always calling her by her full name, but Kaido is clueless about what else to call her. She then points out he calls Sylphie by her nickname, so he realizes that Lucilia is jealous this time. He soon suggests a few nicknames for her, and she likes Lucy Ad, and they agree to call her this from now on. The 2 of them then go ahead to explore the dungeon, and Kaido states that they still haven't cleared up the party issue if they ignore him. The next day, while going to school, Katsuragi asks Kaido if he practiced dancing over the weekend or did muscle training, and Kaido says he did both. She's glad to hear this and asks if he'd like to go shopping with her next Saturday, and he shyly agrees. Katsuragi then notices one of her friends ahead and walks the rest of the way with her. However, Kaido also encounters his friends on the way, and they have heard about the shopping trip. They wonder if they're going on a date, but Kaido doesn't think Katsuragi would be interested in dating him. His friends are disappointed by how clueless he is, So they then ask him about the event and if he partnered with an older person, but he informs them that he joined a party of 3 girls. Hearing this, his friends wonder if the dungeon is more fun than they expected and consider heading back in there themselves. The scene then cuts to Saturday, where Kaido picks up Katsuragi from her home and they head to the subway station. There, Kaido notices a broadcast of the dungeon TV show. Watching it, we learn that magic cores are valuable resources that can be traded for money. Despite their value, the exact use of their unknown energy is still a mystery. Katsuragi, however, noticing Kaido's interest, tells him to forget about the dungeons for today and focus on their shopping trip. As they walk around town, Katsuragi wonders when was the last time the two of them went out like this. But Kaido thinks back to their childhood, remembering her dad taking them to various places. They then hit the stores for some clothes shopping, where Katsuragi tries on a few outfits. Finally, she asks which one he likes best, and he picks the one she's currently wearing. Afterward, they head to the park, where Katsuragi spots some boats and suggests they go for a ride. As they paddle around, Katsuragi notices some beautiful fish in the water, but Kaido thinks she's even more beautiful. Seeing couples in the other boats, Kaido briefly imagines they must look like a couple too, but quickly dismisses the thought, reminding himself they're just hanging out. Katsuragi soon notices that Kaido looks more muscular than usual and comments that his muscle training is paying off. This flustered the boy, and she says that they should have more outings like this. The scene then cuts to them sipping juice, both enjoying the flavors, but Katsuragi asks if Kaido wants to try her flavor, and Kaido agrees, offering her a sip from his glass. After tasting her flavor, he thinks it's pretty good. However, Katsuragi hesitates for a moment, thinking of it as an indirect kiss, but then goes for it nevertheless. They head back to the subway station and spot an advertisement about the dungeon again. There, Katsuragi sees a dad holding his daughter and tells Kaido she wants to visit another place. She soon leads him to the dungeon theme park, and he wonders if she wants to go inside since the parade and fireworks are about to start. However, she just asks if the dungeon building is inside the park, explaining that's where her dad is. We learn that she had been dreaming about the last time she saw her dad, who had promised to have dinner with her but never came home. She also questions why he even goes into the dungeon. But before they go home, Katsuragi tells Kaido that she had a great time today and suggests that they head home. Deep in his heart, Kaido knows she's worried about her dad, but he is determined to prove that he can be a hero just like him. This then concludes the 5th episode's recap of this anime. If you enjoyed this video and want more of it, go ahead and hit that like button down below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you everyone for helping us in reaching 5,000 subscribers. Let's continue to grow this community and help us reach a new goal of 10,000 subscribers.